This is the Montana Outdoor Podcast, brought to you in part by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. And by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. Now, get ready for more fascinating topics and the most interesting people you will ever find in Montana's great outdoors. We offer new podcasts most every Saturday. You can get a link to these podcasts by going to our website, montanooutdoor.com, or by going to our Facebook page, or just send an email to downrigger at montanooutdoor.com and say send a link to my email. It's that simple. Now let's head out with your host, Downrigger Dale, and see what's going on in Montana's great outdoors.
Thank you very much, Manny. Downrigger Dale here, as he just said, with the Montana Outdoor Podcast. Hey, I want to first thank all of you again for tuning in, downloading this podcast all the time, and sharing it with all your friends. We really do appreciate that, and this podcast has grown unbelievable, and of course, that's all due to all of you that listen. We're now, if you can believe it, folks, in just little old Montana, we're now in the top 20% of podcasts in the nation. So that's great, and I owe it all to you, great listeners. Now, you know, folks, we are in the third week. Well, by the time we listen to this podcast, we're going to be even beyond that. So many of you are out hunting. You know, in Montana, the hunting season started out real slow. Had some pretty unseasonably warm weather, and so many of you were a little frustrated with that. We had way below average in hunter turnout and game harvest, but that's been changing, and that's obviously due to the weather. So I thought, what better than to find somebody that really understands the outdoors? And what I want to talk today, folks, is about those times that we hope never happens, but they always happen when you least think it, and that is you get out hunting, and all of a sudden weather turns, things happen, and you realize, oh no, I'm not going to make it back to the truck, and what am I going to do? So I wanted to get a guy on. I don't know if you folks that are listening here to the podcast know about a show called Alone, and this is one of those reality shows. You've seen it probably on the History Channel. I don't know if it's on Nat Geo or whatever, but there was a guy on back, I think, in the 2018, Jordan Jonas. He won that competition. It's an unbelievable show. If you haven't seen it, you got to watch this thing. I mean, people go out in the middle of nowhere and have to survive. So I've got him on. Jordan now, he lives in Montana. In fact, I'm talking to him right now from Darby, Montana. But we're going to learn all about him. Jordan Jonas, welcome to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you. It's an honor. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah. Let's, I guess, start with a little background on yourself. You have done a lot. You are one of those guys, I think, all of us outdoor folks. Of course, I'm getting a little long in the tooth and don't quite do as much crazy stuff out in the woods as I used to, but you know, all of us kind of wish we were a guy like you that can do all these cool things. Give us some background about yourself from your times, of course, in Montana and that. And I guess you even spent some time out in the wilderness of Russia, huh?
Yeah. So I actually grew up not far from Montana in North Idaho, kind of the Sandpoint area. And grew up on a farm there. When I was a teenager, I actually ended up riding freight trains across the country, kind of a long story, but that was my first, real experience of getting out there, getting stranded in whatever weather comes and all that.
Yeah.
So a little hobo action.
Yeah, I
And
was just
then,
going to say, were you like a teenage hobo or what?
definitely, yeah, it's basically what it was. Just spent a year doing that. Rode across the U.S. up and down the coasts and stuff, but
Wow.
got to see the country. In the meantime, I would stop in certain areas and do temporary work, do some construction jobs or whatever. And we ended up in Virginia, and I ended up renovating, staying there and renovating some old rundown houses. And while I was there, I was in the construction trade and got an invite to go to Russia, help build an orphanage. And so I went over there, and it was central Siberia, way out in the middle of nowhere. There's a little Russian village that I stayed at. We'd cut hay with scythes and milk cows every day. And the guy that I lived with had actually been in prison together with a native fur trapper in the far north. So to make a long story short, that native came down, invited me to go live with him in North Siberia, and I said yes and did it. And man, what an adventure. I definitely, I grew up in the area here in the Northwest, and we all are familiar with the outdoors, but I had never been so immersed as that time. It's been weeks out by yourself, living off the land and learning to trap and all that. And then once I earned his trust, all his cousins were actually nomadic reindeer herders.
Really?
So he took me out. Yeah, pretty wild. He took me out and introduced me to his cousin, basically like, Andre, this is Jordan. Jordan, this is Andre, and dropped me off at a teepee and left. And I didn't even know people still lived like that, to be honest. It was pretty awesome. They're nomadic, follow the reindeer, herds around, have domesticated reindeer that they ride like horses. Pretty fascinating.
Did you speak Russian, or how did you communicate?
Well, when I first went, I did not, and I did, but I was there enough time. I spent over 5 years there, so I learned it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And they also have a native language.
Well, I imagine, yeah. You get that far out, then languages change. So you had to probably pick up on that whole language as well, huh?
A bit. I definitely I was never very good with the Evenki language, but they all speak Russian also, so we mixed it around. And
Man, so you spent how long way out in that Siberian wilderness?
Well, the first time I went with the fur trapper guy, we went kind of our separate ways. He showed me the ropes and then wanted me to go open some traps for him. So that was my first long-term stint by myself. It was about 5 weeks, just, and then I lived with the native folks a total of 3 years. So that was just always outdoors, living in teepees and stuff, but I wasn't necessarily alone most of the time.
So how did you go from that to all of a sudden finding yourself on national television on Alone? Tell us about that program and that experience.
Definitely something I never saw coming. I was, spent most of my 20s in Russia, and I'd think to myself, boy, I really need to go to school, figure out a career. But can't be just living in the woods for a living. But no, anyway, I came back to the States, and my buddy showed that show to me, Alone. And I think the first and second season had come out. And so I watched it, and we were like, as you do when you watch those shows, you're like, oh, I could do that,
Yeah. How old were you when you watched that first?
Oh, what was I? I was probably 28 or so. 29. Yeah. And then I actually sent him a real short application. I just sent a link to some YouTube videos of me living with the natives in Russia and said I could do it. And then I forgot about the show. Oh, I was probably actually, to be honest, in my 30s when I watched it. Anyway, forgot about it. And then 3 years later, out of the blue, they just called me and said, hey, this is the Alone Show, and we'd like to have you on season 6. I was like, oh, man, I forgot about that show.
Wow.
So I had to go catch up, watch the seasons that had aired in the interim. And yeah, pretty wild. And I just said, I thought, man, I can't say no. I got all the skills and we'll just see if the doors keep opening. And sure enough, they did. Pretty soon they were dropping me off on a helicopter on the shores of Great Slave Lake in northern Canada.
Okay, so Great Slave Lake, where is that located in northern Canada?
So it's just south of the Arctic Circle. I forget how many, 40 kilometers or something. So it's fairly north and quite centrally located in Canada.
Mhm.
It's a big lake. I think it might be the third largest lake in Canada. I forget. Anyway, It's a very large lake, fairly northern, still forested. We weren't in the tundra.
So did you find that similar to where you had been in like Siberia at all? Was it similar to that?
That's a good question. I actually it felt very much like home, I would almost say. I got dropped off, and you naturally are frustrated by, this isn't what I thought it would look like, and my sight's not very good. You have all the regular complaints, but then once I was there about a week and kind of got into my groove, I started to realize, like, man, this really does feel like just another trip to Russia. And so having been to Russia, go ahead.
Yeah. So what was the rules? Because it's in essence a competition. So
right.
They drop. Are other people dropped off in the same kind of area around that lake?
Yeah, I'll give you a quick rundown of the show. It's a pretty good show. I don't watch any TV really, and that was the only show I watched before I even got on. So, what the premise of the show is, they drop 10 people off in, near each other, miles apart. And you're given 10 items that you can select off a list, basic items like an axe and a saw and a sleeping bag. And you pick 10 items, and they drop you off, and you have a little button that you can give up with. And it's basically whoever lasts the longest wins. So once the second place person quits, the final person wins. And so you're alone the whole time. They have you self-film, so they give you cameras and batteries, and every week or 10 days they'll come out and make sure you're still healthy. And because if you lose too much weight, if you're gonna verge on organ failure or something, they'll pull you out of there.
Okay. And
anyway,
and then,
whoever lasts the longest.
Do they update you on people that are dropping out or any of that? Do you kind of know?
No, you don't. You're totally in the dark. So that show could hypothetically go a year.
Wow.
And so I was trying to plan for that. And you just have no idea how long you're going to be out there and how many other people are still there.
So what were the 10 items that you chose?
Yeah, I took an axe and a saw and a Leatherman, bow and arrow, a fishing kit, sleeping bag, a pot, let me think here. It's always, a ferro rod to start fires.
Okay.
Boy, what were the other ones? I'd have to look. I forget.
So but they don't.
Them up. That's basically it.
They don't give you any food or anything like that.
No food. Nope. Yeah.
So you have
they
to
drop
just
you off and
live off the land,
and you don't get another meal until you catch something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how confident did you feel at that point that, when you get out of that helicopter and off they go, and you're going, I mean, did you go, hey, I got this. I spent a bunch of years in Siberia. Or what were your feelings there?
The experience in Siberia gave me only one advantage, and that was that not only one, but I knew it was possible to live up there. I just had to figure out what that puzzle looked like. Because prior to my season, every season had been won basically by whoever starved the longest. And so I'm a skinny guy. I know it's a podcast. You can't see me.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, man, I'm never going to win a starving contest. So I had a lot of pressure to produce calories, but the advantage I had was knowing that, boy, it's possible up here. I know this environment. I know it can be rich if you unlock it. And so, yeah, that was all my focus and my goal, just provide calories. Yeah.
What were some of the other competitors like? Did they have similar kind of experience like you?
There were no one quite had that same experience.
Yeah, I was going to say that's unusual.
No, but it was everybody was skilled in the outdoors, and of course, you spend 10 days together learning how to film and get oriented and stuff, and so you can't help but kind of size people up a little bit and see who you think might be your biggest competition. I was thinner than many of them, so I was like, oh man, it's one thing trying to, it's difficult trying to come up with, say, 30 pounds of fat in the woods. That's no joke. That's a lot of rabbits or a lot. So I would look at these guys and just be like, oh man, I'm in trouble but I just knew I could ignore everyone else if I was just sustainable. I didn't have to stress about everybody else. So I just had to figure out that key to unlock, sustainability up there.
So, did you have kind of develop a strategy? Let's start here. What was the first meal that you had?
A rabbit. It was actually about 30 minutes after they dropped me off.
Really?
I grabbed my bow and I was like, well, it's as undisturbed as it'll ever be here, so I might as well wander around and just see what I see. And I walked up a hill and saw a little rabbit dash by at about 30 yards and it, whacked it. So that was actually amazingly encouraging because there's a lot of stress, that you're not going to be eaten. And boy, I got a rabbit. Awesome. Day one. So that was my first meal. And honestly, I then having learned that there were a lot of rabbits around, just put snares everywhere. Trap wire was one of the items I took that I didn't mention. And so I just ran a big long trap line. I'd put up 5-10 a day and pull rabbits out every day. The only thing is you actually can't live off of rabbits, believe it or not. Not for long at all. I've heard of rabbit starvation, and I always wondered, I wonder how long it takes to starve living off of rabbits. Like, can you make it 6 months or what? But no, you literally starve as fast as if you weren't eating anything. So,
and why is that? They just don't have enough protein to them, or
it's actually the opposite. They have not enough fat, and so if you eat all that protein, it actually takes more energy to digest that protein without the fat than having nothing at all. So, I was somewhat aware of that, so I wouldn't actually eat a lot of the meat off the rabbits. I'd always just eat the organs and the brains and the head and all that. But even that, I was losing weight as fast as everybody else. That said, I had a full belly. So,
so where did you get? One, did you have any knowledge about nutrition or anything like that prior to going into this?
Definitely not my strong suit. That is something that I was aware of. Like, I've heard the term of protein poisoning or rabbit starvation. So I just didn't know what it looked like practically. I'd never seen anyone try it. So I was kind of learning on the fly, particularly on that. I knew, and for anyone listening, that fat, when you're living in the woods, when you're living off the land, is gold, basically. So it'd be interesting. I'd end up catching fish and having all kinds of animals, and anything that ever came to steal my stash, whether it be wolverines or ravens, they would only ever eat the fatty parts of the animal. So they'd pull a fish off of my stash and eat the skin and eat the eyes out and just ditch all the meat. So that was interesting. So you can kind of observe the animals and figure out where the value is.
Right. So yeah, you're learning from the animals that eat what they eat.
Yeah.
So what were some of the other things you were able to find? Were you eating any kind of plants or?
So up into my season, like I said, it had been mostly a starvation contest. And early on, I was on a similar trajectory. No, but just eating those rabbits and eating berries, lots of berries, lingonberries and crowberries and blueberries, a bunch of different berries.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not very sustainable. And but I put a lot of work from day one into big game. And I moved my shelter to a place where the wind would be advantageous. And I found a bunch of tin cans that were all rusted out, but that I could tie string across moose trails with these tin cans and kind of make a little alarm system around my territory.
Mm-hmm.
And so at one morning, I woke up to that alarm going clank, clank, and I hopped out and ran up and saw a big old moose. Believe it or not, I took a shot at it and missed it.
Oh, geez.
but then I immediately, tracked it through the woods, and then assessed the situation. I was like, man, I got to make that situation happen again. So I pulled a trick that I'd learned with the natives in Siberia and built a big, long fence, and funneled all the big game traffic into one trail. And then I hunted that trail. And again, I had those cans up. One day I heard a can clank. I ran over to that funnel fence that I built, and a moose came wandering along, and I shot it. And so I had a lot of food at that point. I kind of,
yeah,
what an exciting moment that was. Yeah.
Oh, I'll bet. Now, how did you preserve the food? Or let me back up. What kind of weather were you in at this point?
So it was warmer as like this fall in Montana. It was warmer than I wanted, and warmer than I expected. So it was in the 50s in the day, and it'd cool off at night, but enough that I was concerned about the meat. So I got it all and chopped it up into quarters, basically, and hung those quarters in the little shelter I built and smoked them like crazy. And then while those were smoking, I'd pull a chunk out and strip it into little strips and throw all those in the smoker. And that way I could work my way through the moose, turn it into smoked jerky, basically.
Okay.
Fortunately, it got cold enough before I had to do the whole thing, and I could just freeze it.
Now, what kind of shelter did you build?
It was a little A-frame, pretty simple. We had a tarp, so I built a little hard to explain, but basically just an A-frame with small logs that were chinked with moss, and then a little I had a fire inside, so I had a rock-lined little fireplace, a little smoke ventilation, so it didn't get smoky in there, and I was pretty comfortable. I kept it small because I wanted to keep it simple so that I could spend all my time providing calories, and so that it would be easier to warm in the winter, keep warm. I could even bury it as the snow came and have a little cave.
Yeah. So how long were you out there in total?
In total, the show ended on day 77. So the lady that tapped out at the end gave out at day 72. And then it took them a handful of days to come get me. I honestly thought the show would probably go twice as long as that. So I was totally shocked when it ended. But it was
so 72 days. I mean, that's a long time. Longer than I'd probably make it. But that doesn't seem quite.
Yeah, 77 was what I was out there. It was it's interesting because it all comes down to calorie provision. There's a lot of people on my season in particular got pulled out because they just got too skinny, and their health was at risk. So, and I don't know. I was just so singularly focused on providing food, be it fishing and hunting and all that, and I had enough experience to make that successful. So, and the opportunities.
During this 77 days, did you ever see another person?
No, except, every 10 days or so, they'd come out and do a medical check, give you new batteries and stuff. So you'd interact with the crew at that time, although they tried to always keep it real businessy
Yeah.
and personal.
Uh-huh. So what did you do? You know, I've heard that isolation for us human beings sometimes cannot be real good for us from a mental standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
What did you do to keep yourself sane, shall we say?
That's a good question. I mean, and the answers could be very robust, but I would say part of it was having perspective on my experience. So because I had lived in Siberia for such a long period of time, I had come to the realization that, you know, I'd be gone, you'd miss your family, you'd be gone for a year, but then you'd come back and they're all still there. They still love you. You know, your relationships are still intact. So I didn't have to worry about my relationships while I was there, because I'd already tested them in the fire, I guess. Then,
Sure. Yeah.
having perspective on I've always enjoyed reading history and all that. And so I know that what true suffering looks like.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that, you know, and so that puts it into perspective a little bit. I think, you know, some things I noticed while I was out there, when you're alone and undistracted, it's not an experience we have very often in the modern world.
Right.
And, the fact that when I was in the quiet for that long, you know, I recognize very clearly that any skeletons that you have in your closet are going to come up. Any tied loose ends within, you know, relationally or whatever, is going to come up. Fortunately, I didn't have anything like that, you know, that was really extreme. But I can imagine finding yourself in a situation like that. If you had a bunch of these, you know, maybe you were cheating on your wife, or you had, you know, ripped some guy off or something, you might even forgot about it in your own head. But once you get quiet for months at a time, boy, that'll pop back up and nag you. So it's actually something I've mentioned to people before they go on some kind of experience that might be like that, to like, just make sure everything's wrapped up in your life. You know, your loose ends are tied. It'll make you much more resilient in that kind of a
get right
situation
with yourself, as they say.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Jordan, we're going to take a quick break here. And when we come back, I want to shift gears a little bit and see if you can help some of our podcast listeners if they ever get themselves in a situation like you were in. Now that you were in it voluntarily, but sometimes, especially out in Montana's wilderness, we can find ourselves alone. So I want to have you maybe help us and give us a little advice on that when we come back right after this. I know our regular listeners to this podcast have heard me talk about Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer, but for those of you that are new here, let me start with the basics about Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. They are your locally owned Boss Snowplow, CM Truck Bed, and Diamond Sea Trailer dealer. They offer a wide variety of auto, truck, and trailer accessories and specialize in sales and service of trailers. Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer is conveniently located at 5680 Expressway in Missoula, Montana. Now, let's get into the stuff that truly makes them special and why they are the ones we recommend if you ever need a new trailer, a snowplow, or just need service and or advice. Let me give you an example. They carry the best snowplows on the planet. That's Boss Snowplows. So that way, when you get sick of just getting by with what you have, or sick of spending a fortune to have someone else plow you out, you can come tell the folks at Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer about what and where you need to remove snow, and they will help you find the perfect Boss snowplow to get the job done right now and likely for the rest of your life. I'm going to tell you something about these Boss snowplows that just amazes me, but I truly hear about it all the time once someone I know buys one. They always say something to the effect of, "You know, Rigger, I never thought I'd say this, and I know it sounds crazy, but I actually have fun plowing snow with my Boss snowplow. And crazier yet, I like it so much I actually look for places near me that need plowing and ask property owners if I can plow it for them." Gang, I'm not exaggerating. That is the Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer difference. They carry the equipment that not only is perfect for you, it actually becomes part of you. So, gang, don't end up hoping you get the right snowplow, trailer, or truck bed. Just go to rmtte.com. Look at what they have, then call them at 406-549-4243. Get all your questions answered, and then go have fun this winter. Thanks to Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. Go see them, rmtte.com. That's Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. Back here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast, I'm with Jordan Jonas, winner of the Alone competition, the series you see on TV. Won that back in, what was it, Jordan, in 2018, was it?
Yeah, 19 it aired, season 6.
Okay, season 6. And we were talking a bit about your experiences there and living alone way up in the northern area of, well, actually not far from the Arctic Circle in Canada, and what you were able to do there to win that. Let's talk a bit about the wilderness here in Montana. And for example, let's say there's a hunter out there. He's doing his thing, and all of a sudden weather comes in, things happen, and you realize I'm not going to be able to make it back to my truck. Night's going to fall. I really didn't plan for this. I got a few things. What advice would you give someone when they find themselves in that situation?
Yeah, well, and it depends a little bit on your level of preparedness. So it is good ahead of time to think about that, and always have with you. I always carry with my water bottle. I also have a little bit of whatever you would possibilities pouch, people call it, or survival kit. Something that'll help you start a fire, maybe a Mylar blanket, some things like that. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're going to have to overnight, say
right.
Well, the first thing is to actually just understand that it's going to be okay. I mean, worst case scenario, you have a sleepless, terrible night, but you stay awake, you stay, and you stay warm, or as you can. But don't let that. A lot of times people get scared and uncomfortable and start making bad decisions. So just calming down, and then I think one of the most important things is being able to start a fire. So
with needing to start a fire now, for our podcast listeners, you guys have heard us talk on the Montana Outdoor Radio Show. We always do just before hunting season gets started. We put out the hunter's checklist, and we make a list of all the things that you should have, and often, especially if we've been hunting quite a bit in our life, you might kind of cheat a little on that checklist and you forget this or that. What are some things that, let's say someone gets out there and they realize, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to start a fire. I mean, what would you recommend at that point?
Well, there's definitely that situation happens a lot. So again, I always take 2 fire starting methods with me, a lighter and a ferro rod. And I also have the knowledge that would allow me to do a bow drill in an extreme situation. But given all that, you don't have any of that, you can still make it through a night. I would, of course, if you're starting to see that you're not going to make it back, I would usually try to find a tree, like a big spruce tree with a lot of boughs, kind of start that as a base for an overnighter. Those can usually block most of the precipitation you're going to get. And then I would build a nice thick bed of boughs below yourself, keep you a little bit warmer at night, and really make yourself a bough cave, start leaning up a bunch of boughs against the tree, so you're going to be at least dry. And then you huddle up as much as you can with what you do have. And of course, if you have no way of starting a fire, you're going to have a long, miserable night, but
sure,
you'll make it through. And so, and just staying out of the weather. I usually find the easiest way to do that is, a big thick spruce tree that you can add extra boughs to. And and you have to hunker down.
So when you realize, okay, I've made it through that night, but yeah, it may take a little bit more time. What are some of the things that you'd recommend there? One of the things you were talking about is just getting any kind of food is not necessarily the right thing. What are things that they should start to look for? I suppose water is probably a big one. You want to make
water for sure. Yep. You need to make sure you can find some water. That's often the case in Montana. Go downhill.
Yeah. You're going to run across some kind of water anyway.
But of course, you got to be careful what kind of water you're drinking.
Exactly, that can backfire on you.
Yeah. Water's going to be your next thing. If you've made it through the night, you stayed warm, you're going to want to make sure you can get a hold of some water. And then it depends on if somebody's going to be missing you or not. If you feel like somebody might be coming looking for you, you build those big smoky fires.
Sure. Yeah.
And if nobody's going to be coming looking for you, then another thing you do as a part of preparedness before you go out is really familiarize yourself with the topography of the area you're going to be in, so that you aren't getting dreadfully lost, and then a lot of times people rely on Onyx and stuff, but if you just overnighted, your phone might be dead. So it's good to store away in your mind the lay of the land, so that your truck. Okay, I went up this valley. I can go back down this valley. I'm going to end up at my trip, at my truck, and you kind of know where you are in relation to all that stuff. So pay attention. It's easy to get into hunting and forget where you're at.
Sure.
Run over this and that ridge.
Yeah, especially, if you end up maybe not getting the shot that you really desired, and now you're tracking this animal, you can get focused on that and end
go
up
a long ways. Oh,
where
yeah.
in the hell am I now? Yeah. I hear you. So
there's helpful things if the sun's shining, there's ways of knowing your direction, of course. But on a foggy or an overcast day, that can be trickier. So
sure,
awareness is important.
Do you find that your experience on alone and spending those 70 some days out all by yourself with nothing but your own resources and your own mind, do you think that made you a better hunter?
Yeah, my experience on alone was definitely helpful, in that it was just more time out in the woods, which always makes you a better hunter, helps you think outside the box in some of those situations. That said, I also had a lot of that knowledge going in. So one thing that struck me about alone was it felt more like another trip to Russia, as it did some great life-changing fork in the road. And so I don't know, to some degree, of course, it did improve me, because it was the most time I've spent by myself, and it makes me confident enough that I just don't have to worry about going up over that next ridge and what might happen, if I get stuck out overnight. But I think I had those skills to somewhat prior to that, and I've developed them since then. Your outdoor skills are constantly growing. So there's always more to learn.
What would you recommend to hunters out there that could help improve their skills? Because we can go to a sporting goods store and get all the best equipment and have all that, but really it comes down to this chess match, if you will, between you and the game you're trying to hunt.
Man, I will say, for people that to nothing beats time in the woods. No amount of gear, of anything. If you're new to hunting and you're trying to get into it, or you're just trying to become better, just time out there covers a lot of that which you don't already have. So But part of being able to stay out there and spend that time is having the confidence that you're going to be okay. So I do recommend people have the basic knowledge that'll help them in those situations we were talking about earlier. So if you can overnight and you can spend that time in the woods, all the knowledge will come with it.
Mm-hmm.
You'll know what gear's good and what gear's not, and what's vital, and what the wheat from the chaff.
Right, right. So now, fast forwarding from your time alone to today, what are you doing now, Jordan? What are some of the things that you're doing?
So we've recently bought an outfitter, which is pretty neat. We had I've been running for the last handful of years, summer courses up in the Bitterroots, where we take people out and teach them the basic survival skills you need, kind of give them the fundamentals they need to approach situations like we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I've just been doing a lot of cool backwoods adventures, going to lakes people never get to, things like that. And now that we, as of this year, have bought our own outfitter, we can also offer hunts. So actually just now I was organizing a couple mountain lion hunts for January. We have a couple spots for those if anyone's interested.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have bear hunts coming in the spring, and, some elk come fall, and deer. So, just diving into that at the moment, which has been great.
Well, we're going to take one more quick break. And when we come back, I want you to talk a little bit about some experiences that you can offer. And I want you to focus a little on some of these places in Montana that, you had mentioned lakes maybe that you've never seen before that. Tell us a bit about some of those kind of places that you've been to when we come back right after this. I want to talk a bit about a very special company located in western Montana, Superior Hardwoods of Montana. They were established in 1977, and since that time, guiding customers through the woods has been their passion throughout their history. The main focus at Superior Hardwoods of Montana has been to provide the finest wide plank flooring and unique building materials available anywhere. One of the things I noticed right away about the owner of Superior Hardwoods of Montana, John Medliger, and his son Corey, and the rest of the staff there is they're very proud to offer the largest selection of in-stock flooring in the western United States. See, for over 40 years, they've been known for leading the industry in reclaimed and antique building materials, and the success that followed has allowed them to, now get this, stock over 11 acres of stunning architectural lumber that awaits the perfect addition to your home. One thing I want you to remember is just because they're located in Missoula, Montana, that does not mean they can't help you turn your home into a piece of historical art if you live somewhere else. They have been guiding folks from as far away as Hawaii and beyond through the woods for many years. So no matter if your project is located across the street from them, across the state, or somewhere else in the world, they can't wait to turn your house into a dream home. Their goal is simple. They stand ready to deliver the best choices with reliability and honesty, helping at any phase of a project with inspirational advice. And I'm not exaggerating when I say they actually treat their customers as friends and family. So the choice is yours. But if I were you, I would go to superior-hardwoods.com. superior-hardwoods.com. Of course, you're more than welcome to call them, 406-235-7452, or, they'd love you to visit 5120 Highway 93, just south of Missoula, Montana. They can't wait to guide you through the woods at Superior Hardwoods of Montana. Go see them. You're going to love what they do to your home. Back here with Jordan Jonas, winner of the Alone series. If you ever want to look that up on YouTube or whatever, 2019 series, it's 6. you can check him out and watch those. But a guy that's done everything from being a teenage hobo to everything else, and now you are an outfitter and teaching people survival skills, and also you've got some hunts that you offer that people can do that. First, how would people get a hold of you if they want to talk to you about it?
I have a website at jordanjonas.com.
Okay.
I also have an Instagram that keep everybody up to date if they do that. It's at Hobo Jordo.
Okay, Hobo Jordo. Okay, and for those of you listening, rather than thinking you got to write that down, I'm going to put links to the things that Jordan just mentioned right there in the podcast description, so you'll be able to click to them and get right to Jordan's site and all that. So let's talk about some of these places that you can take people, or that you have been in Montana that people rarely go to. Give us some examples of places maybe someone's never seen before.
Man, the amazing thing about Montana is it's actually full of those places.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Like, it's such an inspiring place to live. I think a lot of times, especially for people that grow up in these areas, you almost take a little bit for granted.
I was just going to say, we tend to do that. We get in a rut. Yeah. We go to the same places for hunting, whatever, and we forget there's so much out there.
There's so much beyond it. I mean, I love hunting. I do it all the time, of course. But there's so much beyond that. It's just the exploration, the getting to these unique spots. I've always told people, hey, you know what? Just find a spot on Google Earth that looks like it's way out there, that looks like no one goes to, and find a way to get there. And it's always rewarding. It's always worthwhile. Some of what I teach in the summer on the summer courses is just the empowering people to be able to do just that, because I think there's so much at our fingertips that we take for granted. America's an amazing place with all this public land, and you might find yourself going through life having never scratched even the surface of it. So getting the skills to be able to do that, and then finding those places is what it's all about, and go on your own journey, find your own favorite little spots, nobody goes to.
Well, for example, down in your area where you're at in the Darby area, and that, give us an idea of maybe an out of the way place that folks might want to check out.
Well, I really enjoyed going up the Boulder Creek drainage. Is a beautiful trip. And so I feel like if anyone wanted to do that, that's a winner. Can't go wrong there.
Boulder Creek drainage. So give us an idea of where that would be from, say, Darby.
In the southern Bitterroots, south of Darby.
Yeah. And what do you like most about that?
Well, it's got a nice waterfall as you go up. There's some hidden lakes up there. There's just a lot to explore. It's a very scenic hike.
So in some ways, you remind me a little of that Bear Grylls kind of guy, where you can, take people for an experience maybe they've never thought of. Is that kind of some of the things that you can do if say a family
Absolutely.
said, hey, I'm going to take you kids out for something that we've never done before. We're going to go out and just cut the cell phones off and that. Is that a kind of a customized experience you could do?
Definitely. I love facilitating that. And I do like private courses like that. Actually, I got a bunch of llamas specifically for my own family, so I could take the family up and spend weeks at a time up there. But now I can offer those to others too. Like maybe you want to get your family up there and disconnect them and have a, awesome time at a lake or whatever. I can absolutely facilitate that, and I love doing so.
Well, and that's one of the things I read about you is you like to use llamas for packing in and all that.
Yeah.
So often, we think of mules and things like that. What made you gravitate to llamas?
Well, specifically having worked with, outfitted with horses and stuff before, particularly having little kids and having a little family I wanted to take out, they can be a little dangerous, especially when you also got a lot of people coming unexperienced with stock, and you get them riding horses. It can be fairly dangerous, to be honest.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and they
especially
can
in
be
some of those mountain environments.
sure.
So
Yeah, and they can
those
be a little
llamas are
intimidating too for kids.
right,
A big horse. So yeah.
right. I mean, it's awesome. I use horses at times too, but the llamas, what's really nice about them is they're also really low impact and really low key in the woods. So I can take them up there when I'm hunting, and I don't have to bring food. They can just nibble on twigs and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe if I get onto some elk and it's up and over a ridge, and I'm going to be after them a couple days, I don't even have to go. The llamas are just self-sufficient, quiet. They're very easy in the woods, like shockingly easy. They're just low maintenance. So
Man, I
I
never
really
thought of
like that about
Yeah.
them. Yeah. With a horse, you almost have to have somebody full time manning them and moving them around and here and that. But the llamas are very low maintenance in the woods. That's, I think, what I like the most about them.
How much can a llama haul? I mean, they seem
Oh,
like
they vary. I always try to pack them lighter just because it's better for them. But, they can carry up to, a big one can carry 100 pounds. 80 pounds is kind of a heavy load for a llama usually. So I usually keep them around 60 or so just to give myself more distance.
So if somebody was going to, say want to take them on a hunting trip, I mean, do you take a couple of them then? I mean, obviously one llama
Yeah, I
wouldn't be
think
able to
3
pack out a
llamas
elk.
is about right if you're going to do a little trip, because I can pack out an elk. You and the llamas will get your elk and gear out if you have a few of them.
Okay. So
Have a little string.
So a little string of llamas. Are they hard to train and that, or are they pretty?
Not necessarily. I mean, there's all kinds of horror stories of bad llamas, but I haven't had those. Typically, mine are all pretty chill, and they're not hard to train. And the other interesting thing about them is they don't really get rusty. So like they get out of shape, but you go in the spring, there's no brushing up necessary. You just throw a pack on them and head into the woods, and they go right after it.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's pretty nice. They're a good animal, honestly. You just have to walk.
Yeah. Well, that's true. But a lot of us do that anyway.
Oh yeah, I don't mind it.
So if people want to set up something like that, they could and kind of set up their own little backcountry expedition, if you will, and do that.
Yep, just shoot me an email or an Instagram message.
And another thing I wanted to ask you about is, Jordan, one of the things that the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks is really trying to focus on this year is talking about ethical hunting and talking about, if we want to all get more access onto private ground, you're going to have to learn how to treat somebody else's property and all that and get through that. I know that just reading about you is something that's real important to you, is the ethics in hunting.
It is. I think not as many people hunt anymore, and those that don't, I think, often have a misconception of hunters in general, and think of us as people who, just out there to kill and, this and that. But really, in my experience, people who hunt, and especially if you're doing it mindfully in a way, there's almost nobody more in tune with animal numbers and populations and health of the ecosystem. And, most of the hunting I do is up in wilderness areas, so it's always leave no trace, and you're always aware of that. But I think being conscious of the idea that we have to be our best advocates also in order to keep hunting going on into the future, because for people that don't understand it, it becomes less and less popular. People become more and more disconnected from our role in nature, and they don't understand that we can play a role well and play an active role well in helping create life-filled ecosystems. And so knowing our place in that system, and playing that role well is really important. And then articulating that to the greater public so that they don't have those misconceptions about hunters, I think is really important, because it's so important to be a part of nature and the ecosystem and not think that we can live disconnected from it, you know?
Yeah.
So.
And I think I agree with you. I think that's something that the general public that, like you say, that isn't into hunting really misunderstands about it is
right.
That, like you say, the hunter probably is the best conservationist and environmentalist, if you will,
right.
out there. They know more about it and love and respect nature more than the average person. They don't want to just
absolutely
kill everything. One of the areas that I know we would all like to see is getting our youth more involved into hunting and fishing. You know, for Montana, a lot of people forget that that's how our whole Fish, Wildlife, and Parks is funded, is through the sale of hunting licenses and all that. So if less and less people are hunting and fishing, you know, that becomes a problem of just being able to manage all this. So we definitely want to keep these Montana traditions alive. For people that maybe have started a family, the kids are getting to that age now that they're old enough to be able to get out and do that. What advice could you give to parents to get their kids to understand and get more interested in hunting and fishing?
There's a lot of advice. I always recommend to cut back on the screen times. Always good, good advice, because that'll force your kids to get out and be more creative and spend time outside. I think it's important to, you know, I know when my dad passed away, before he died, he told me, like, oh, I wish I would have taken you guys on more trips, you know, spent more time with you. And I think setting aside the time to take your family out and have, you know, a whole week in the woods together, it's going to be eye-opening for them. It's going to be quality time for you where you're not all distracted by the technology. So really take the time to take your family out. I do every year. We do multiple, you know, multi-day trips into the woods. And I think it's important.
How many kids do you
confidence. Have? 3. I got a 8, 6, and a 3-year-old. So
okay, yeah. So
they're not.
You're just getting started. Yeah.
But I also think another cool idea, I actually just had a guy write me yesterday looking for this kind of an experience, was like a rite of passage when your son turns, you know, his son's turning 14 and he wants them to really push him, do like a 8-9 day trek through the wilderness, untrailed, you know, and just everything that comes with that, the hardship, the struggle, the unknown. He wants to help his son develop his character in that way. And I think those rites of passage are missing in our culture these days. We kind of just float into college or beyond. But I think having like an event with your mom or dad or whoever that is, you know, that there's some meaning put behind it is a cool way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I think these are the kind of things that if we can pass, you know, our love of the outdoors and that on to our kids, it benefits not only your children, but it benefits the whole state and what Montana's all about.
Agreed.
Well, Jordan, I want to thank you very much for the time you've taken here today, and I hope that you'd be willing to come back again and chat with us again, and maybe one of these times we can actually get out with you and record a podcast out there, you know?
That'd be awesome. Yeah, it's been great chatting, Dale, and
if people want to get a hold of you and you know, maybe ask you some questions and learn a little bit more about, you know, surviving out there and learning more about the outdoors, what's the best way to get a hold of you? Is it to just go to your website then and do it that way?
I think the website's a good way. If you have Instagram, that is equally as good.
Okay. Yeah, either and one. I'll put those links in the podcast description. I encourage you folks to get a hold of Jordan and learn more about what he does. especially those of you that maybe want to set up your own adventure for your family or a group of friends and that. I think you couldn't be with a better guy. So, all right, Jordan, we'll be in touch, and thanks for being on the Montana Outdoor Podcast.
Sounds good. Have a good one, Dale.
All right, take care. There you have it, folks. If you want an adventure of a lifetime, get a hold of Jordan. And we'll see you again here soon on the Montana Outdoor Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. It has been brought to you in part by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. And by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. So what did you think of today's podcast? Send your questions and comments to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com. We should be dropping a new podcast this next Saturday. Until then, we will see you soon out in Montana's great outdoors.